select and mask, and now is the time that we can start to refine the selection. We could have done it in the first step also, like this, with a quick selection tool, and a lot of photographers do it. But I like to do it after using select color range, because we have a much more accurate selection, much more accurate reference selection for Photoshop to work with. And now you're going to see it's going to do a fantastic job. Now, normally we work with this mode, right? With this red mode, which is the overlay mode. But in these cases, what I like to do is I actually like to select the last option, which is on layers. What this does is it actually puts the layer beneath that you had on top here, so that you can actually see real time once you start to refine the selection how this is going to look. And this is the reason why we transformed this sky beforehand, so that it's big enough and we can work against it. Okay, that was the whole point. Now I'm going to zoom in. So I'm going to take my refine edge tool here. I'm going to zoom in, and now you're going to see it's going to do a fantastic job. So I can start now running it across these branches and the trees. And you can see right now it's not refined at all. This selection, you can see the fringes are being seen, right? Because this is the selection from color range, which does a good job, but won't do a refined job. You'll have to take this to refine edge tool like this. And then I can start working on it by just, running it like this. And you can see it may not absolutely do a great job right now, but we're going to refine the selection even further. But our main job is that, like for example, these things, these very light things can be very tough for Photoshop to remove. But we have a solution for that also. Like you can see it here also. But you can see here, all these fringes start to just get taken care of. And I have a 16 GB RAM laptop, and you can see that even this kind of gets a bit slow when it comes to using select and mask. Okay. So if you have anything slower than this, I'm guessing like a 4 GB RAM or something, you might just have to take some breaks. Okay. So this is a fairly heavy duty that Photoshop is performing, but you can see it's just beautifully getting rid of those halo-like fringes that were there, which look very bad against the sky. Now it's kind of getting a much more realistic look. There's still a bit of light halo here. Like I said, there's a tool for that, which is called the Shift Edge tool, which we're going to use after some time. So you can see this is fairly good. We don't have to do anything about this. Not enough of a halo here, so you can leave this. Maybe some parts here, I can just run like a bit of halo is being seen here. And most, if you just see a white line here, that's okay. Because remember, we are also going to put that faded horizon gradient that we put later, like we did with the Goa image. And that is just going to make this invisible, okay? But at least something like this, we can still run. You see how beautifully that just does the job, right? And maybe here also, though this won't be seen, to be frank, once we put the halo. Mainly, we are going to concentrate on the trees. So just run it across the trees. This, okay, and this tree can be a bit challenging because there is a lot of light faded leaves that it has behind, and we're going to correct this at the end. Okay, right now we're just kind of refining our main selection, so at least we get something better than what color range gave us. Okay, we can see it is started to give those ghost-like look. Okay, and you can see we have kind of a decent selection. I can just go through each part here just to make sure nothing is left here. Okay, see how beautiful that tree looks. Now it doesn't have those fringes, right? Okay, now the issue is, and if you ever find that it has taken something from your main selection, from the foreground, what you can do is you also always have this manual brush tool. Okay, for example, if you found that it had taken, something like this. So you can also take this and just add to your selection to remove this. You can always add, like for example, let's say if I zoom in here, it has taken this part in the selection. So I can always go here and I can tell Photoshop, no, this is a part of my main selection, please add it back, okay? Like, just look out here also, yeah, I think this is fine. Okay, fine. So we have a fairly good selection. But the issue here is that if I zoom in, we're getting those ghost-like things are still coming. Those very faded parts, which can be very tough with a refined edge also. That's why I told you, this is a pretty challenging edit. Okay, because usually if it's an easier or even a medium difficulty edit, at this step we'll be done and we can just click on OK. But you can see here we still have to perform this shift edge step. So what is shift edge? So shift edge means that how much of the edge do you want to either protrude or pull inwards from your original selection. For example, right now it's at 0, but just see what happens when I take it towards the plus side. Can you see? Photoshop is adding to the selection. That means it's putting it outwards. But if we go the other way, that means I go towards the minus side, just see what happens. It starts to actually take away and it starts to just get rid of those ghost-like things. So see, this is at 0 or plus 1, almost the default. And just see, if I take it towards the minus, it's just pulling that inwards. Okay, now the downside of this is, yes, it gets rid of those ghosting things, but it also gets rid of some of the details in your good selection. For example, this was at, okay, something like 0 or minus 1. But if I take it to something like this, it just eats away that. But eating away, it's okay, right? When you see it from a zoomed out look, this won't make too much of a difference. But those fringes look very bad. Okay, so whenever you have a choice between eating away just those edges, choose that over the fringe. Okay, so for example, here I can go even to something like minus 33, minus 35. You can see the tree looks pretty good from here. So see it probably from this level. Okay, but here you can see this was again at something like 0, and we've been able to go just get rid of those whitish looking things. And once that gradient tool comes, the white one, this is going to reduce further. And like I said, there's one more step remaining, which is using the clone stamp tool. This will just completely take care of that. Okay, so I'm going to use, let's say, minus 36. Overall, our selection now looks good. And we can just press and click on OK here. Boom. So you can see we have a fairly accurate selection now. Now some of these things, like for example here, this is coming. So we can again go back to select and mask and just add this. So a better way to see this would be, probably this won't be even recognizable, to be frank, in your main image, but still, just to be a perfectionist, whenever you're slightly just fine-tuning your image, you can again select this red color just to see whatever has been taken from the foreground. That is just easier to see that. Okay, so we can take our main brush tool here and we can just add this back. Okay, like I said, even if you don't do this, no problem. It probably won't show too much. There's a very, very minute selections like this. It's not always possible to get absolutely 100%, but yeah, maybe some here also. So it is a tedious job. Like I said, this is a pretty challenging edit. There's so many, the problem is there's so much common between the foreground and the sky, okay? But I think this is fine. We won't be too perfect about this, but I think this is looking good. Now what I can do is, we have a very, very accurate selection of the foreground. I simply just have to select a layer mask and boom. You can see this is absolutely looking fantastic now, okay? Now, just to make it more realistic, first of all, what we're going to do is, before we add that gradient, we're going to increase the canvas size, because the sky right now is not fitting this image, right? So what we're going to do is, just to increase the canvas size, you can go to the crop, make sure this layer is selected, your first layer. Go to the crop tool. Usually the crop tool is obviously used for cropping, but you can also do the reverse. So if I zoom out, I can actually pull it outwards and it'll increase in its canvas size. So maybe I can take it to something like this. I can press enter. You can see now it just accommodates that tall image from here. And now what we can do is, we can actually, select this and move it. So you see, I'm using the move tool here, and we can get it to an area that we would probably like, something like this. Okay, boom. So this looks pretty good, right? Now, what we can do is, we can add that gradient just to give it a more realistic effect, and also it'll just get rid of those little halo things that we were having. Okay, so what we can do is, we can take our gradient tool here and we can just create a new layer, make sure white is selected, and just run it like this. Okay. Maybe I'll just run it slightly higher, something like this, and then reduce the opacity. This is too strong right now. Something like this, probably. And you can see this also gets rid of so many of those things, like some of the halos were coming, on the edges of the cart, which have disappeared. Some of these have disappeared almost. And even at help here, though here you can still see those things, which we're going to get rid of. So don't worry about that. Okay. So now the thing that we're going to do is the fine tuning of this part of this particular tree and a bit of this we're going to do at the end. Okay, that'll be the last step that we do. Before that, what I want to do is, right now our shot is looking pretty good, but what I want to do is there is a difference right now between the color temperature of the sky and the foreground. Why? Because this foreground was clicked in an overcast sky, so it was pretty cool, and this is pretty warm. So what we're going to do is we're just going to warm up only the foreground. Though you can do this in Lightroom also in our local adjustment step, I just like to do this in Photoshop itself. So first of all, let's do that.